Okay. So again, this is Sarah Broad with DeKalb County Extension, and she will be giving a presentation on backyard berries today. And I have gone ahead and muted everybody. If you have any questions, go ahead and put those questions into the chat box, and Sarah will answer those at the end of the presentation. And I think that's about it. So Sarah, take it away.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, Lisa, for having me. Today, we're going to talk about backyard berries. I'm not sure if any of y'all are growing berries, but maybe this presentation will inspire you. And if you do have them, we might, if you're having issues with them, we can try to answer those questions too. So right now, I know my blackberries and my blueberries are producing, and most of them are ripe, and I've been picking almost every day. So we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, so berries that grow well in Georgia, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries. We're going to talk about goji berries and even strawberries, which are probably the most popular of the berries that people like to grow. Blueberries are very popular here. They're one of the easiest ones to grow in Georgia. They have some great health benefits. They're high in antioxidants, anti-aging, help fight heart disease. They always say you need like a cup of berries every day in your diet. And so, again, they are one of the easier ones. The best ones suited for Georgia are the rabbit eye types. They are more heat and drought tolerant, and it's already hot here in June, and so we definitely have the heat. Sometimes we get a drought, sometimes we get water every day. We don't know. They also get pretty deep roots, so that helps with the drought tolerance for them. If you're interested in growing blueberries, here are some requirements that you have to have. Full sun. So if you don't have full sun, you're going to have a hard time getting a good crop of blueberries. They also like acidic soil. So if you get your blueberry plant and you're ready to plant it, we do recommend you do a soil test. We kind of recommend that with any type of garden you want to plant. You can always get a soil test, bring it to your local extension office. It doesn't have to be the county you live in, but just bring an extension office and they'll send it off to you. We test fruit specifically. Well, if you're planting fruit, that's its own individual recommendations. So we just recommend do the soil test. Blueberries do like acidic soil. The pH would be 4.8 to 5.2, which is very acidic. So just remember that when you're planting. Depending on when you get your soil test back, what your pH is, they might recommend that you add sulfur to the ground to get it a little bit more acidic. We also want well-drained soil. You don't want water standing. That's pretty not really good for any type of plant. Also, when you're selecting a site, besides just the full sun, you also need a water supply nearby. So, when building the bed or whichever place you want to put it, make sure again you don't have any standing water. So, make sure it has drainage. And then if you want to do raised beds, that's kind of up to you. I just have mine in the ground. Blueberry plants will get rather large, so if your raised bed is kind of small, that might not be the best place for it. But one thing with raised beds here in Georgia is you don't have to deal with the clay soil. You can add your own soil. It's a little easier to adjust the pH. So it's kind of up to you if you prefer raised beds or just in the ground. So blueberry production timeline. So the first 2 years or so, you're not going to get a great crop. So we actually recommend when you get a new blueberry plant and you plant it, you want to remove the flowers or the fruit the first year. And that will then get the blueberry to grow and then it will put more energy in it. So it starts like the second or third years when you really will get a good crop. But we recommend, because a lot of times you get your blueberry plant in the spring, it might be flowering, but we recommend removing those flowers or any of the fruit that's started to just, put more energy into the plant and rooting, and then hopefully the next year and the year after. My blueberry plants are about 7 years old or so, and I get a really, really good crop. I mean, to the point where right now the branches are bending over because they're so loaded down with blueberries. So, some of the varieties we recommend, um, when you come to blueberries, you'll see they have an early season, a mid season, and a late season. And that is the flowering type. A lot of times these seasons overlap. So if you want to make sure they're going to flower at the same time, you might want to get two early seasons. I usually get ones that overlap. And you have to have two blueberries though, because they cross pollinate. I see a lot of people that are like, I planted a blueberry bush and I don't have any blueberries. I'm like, well, you just have one? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, that's why you don't have any fruit because they need to cross pollinate. So a lot of times people will buy one mid-season and a late season. A lot of times they flower all at the same time. Sometimes they don't though. So you might want to get 3 plants, maybe 2 in the same season and 1 in a different season, just so they kind of flower at different times. But if like you can't buy 2 Brightwell, they need to cross pollinate with a different variety of blueberries. Site prep planting. So we recommend planting late winter to early spring. So if you're interested in blueberries, just, kind of now's the time to kind of maybe figure out where you want to put it. You can get your site ready. And then once um, February, March rolls around, it's a good time to start planting them. If you want them in the ground, we do recommend tilling the soil and maybe adding some fine compost or topsoil to get some nice soil, and then test for the pH. You want to definitely have that acidic soil. And then when you get them in the ground, and when you buy them, you might want to cut off some of these to make them a little more uniform. So when they start growing, they're not all over the place. Fertilizing blueberries, there's a timeline for this. I don't have to go all the way through this. This would actually be when you get a soil test, they'll tell you what to do that first year. So that's why we recommend soil testing. So, blackberries. And so if we have any questions at blueberries, I can answer them. We're going to move into blackberries and raspberries. Um, These are probably the easiest of the caneberries to grow. Um, they're very nutritious, high in antioxidants. Right now, my blackberries are bursting. I have so many, and they're one of my favorite ones. The only thing, so blackberries and raspberries, they come as erect, semi-erect, and trailing types. So it just depends on which one you want. I have some that are considered the erect types, but because they're so large now, I do need something for them to kind of trail on. So just remember that. They don't need as quite as acidic soil. They kind of want a 6.0 to 6.5, which is the same as you would do your vegetable garden. They do want well-drained, sandy type soils. Um, good water supply, but well-drained soil. So when it comes to um, blackberries specifically, you would have on the plant, you would have a primocane and a floricane. So the primocane is the main cane, and the floricanes are kind of like the little branches out. So this is kind of how they grow. So the first year they're going to fruit off that primocane, and then they'll start fruiting off of their floricanes. So we'll kind of show you. So if you can see here, that primocane is that main thick kind of branch, and the floricanes are the side branches that you'll see. Most of the flowering is on the floricanes. So this is pre-bloom, what it looks like on the left, and then the blooms, they're these white blooms, and then from there it is where you get your blackberries. So these are the different varieties. They don't have to cross-pollinate like the others. I know Apache is a nut one that people like, and Navajo, Nova. We've sold a lot of these in our plant sale. So Blackberries and raspberries, plant away. They say plant away from trees and buildings. You do want to make sure that you have some sort of something for them to grow on. I have mine up against my fence, and they do pretty well there. Again, you want to plant them winter to early spring, same as you would almost all the others. Fertilize, again, this will be told to you in a soil test. Beginning, you want 10-10-10. So if you get some that are not the erect type or they're older, you do want to have some sort of trellis type. Now, again, this is like production that you see in the picture, but they have the T trellis, which isn't always ideal for homes, but those supported trellises right here, basically there's like a board and then they have the lines. Now, this is more if you're going to have like production. If we're just having a backyard garden, you don't necessarily need something quite so robust, I guess. So for trellising, again, I just have mine up against my fence and they kind of grow along the top of the fence. So, but you could get something a little, I've seen community gardens, they have the tall ones and they have them growing on the trellis that are tall. You could have a mini version of that, or you could just grow them and, just have something to kind of corral them so they don't go everywhere. So this is like a shorter one. They've kind of woven the canes on the trellis. This is something you could do on a small scale at home if you want. Or these little hedgerow ones, you can see they have the two little T's, they're a little shorter. Or you can have this one T on each end and they have like wires that kind of help keep them in line. So if you can see erect versus trailing, the ones on the left versus the ones on the right. T trellis, they say they have better light, higher yields. All right. So pruning the floricanes can sometimes be a little, I don't know, people find it a little hard to understand. But that first year, you're going to want to top your floricanes. And the primocanes. So top the primocanes, remove some of the floricanes. So the primocane again is like the main stem. Floricanes are the branches that come out. So then it will look like this in the summer. And then you're going to get all of this lateral branching. You kind of want to remove some of those scraggly lateral branching. So then when they start blooming in the spring and they fruit, it will be a little more contained and they'll put a lot more energy into getting the berries that year. Again, that first year, you're probably not going to get a great harvest. It will take at least probably 2 to 3 years to get a good harvest, and that comes from most berries. So. All right, so topping primocanes, you can see here, he kind of shows where that growth on the left and then what he topped on the right here. Don't, make a nice clean cut. You don't want it to like be ripped off. So, and then topping the primocanes encourages the lateral branching. So heading laterals in late winter, why would you do that? It says it increases fruit size, light penetration into canopy. That's one thing I deal with a lot with even like tomatoes. It's hard to get the light down on the bottom of the plant to get those tomatoes to ripen. So I have to remove a lot of branches that aren't even having any flowers on them just to get the light down in there. If they don't have the light penetration, then they're not going to ripen. So you want to do that late winter to early spring. You can prune laterals back. You're not completely removing them, but you're just kind of cutting them back. All right, so of course, always remove weak, broken, and other excess canes. So just like we would do in any other plant. You don't want a weak or a broken one can actually cause disease to enter to the plant. So just make sure you prune those off at the primocane to get rid of those. All right, so here you are. You have your uh, blackberries, raspberries, whichever they are, and they look kind of all over the place. And now you can see they did a nice pruning, and look how much better those look right here. So they can get a little wild. And I am a person that pruning is not something I tend to forget or don't do. And my blackberries are all over the place. I had to apologize to my neighbors because they were growing into their yard. And I was like, just pick what you want. But yeah, I need to prune those back so they're not crawling over the fence into my neighbor's backyard. So you can see here that main primocane, the big thick one, and then the little floricanes. This is a little bud, going to produce a flower. And that's when it comes to blackberries and blue and raspberries. So we're getting into strawberry. We do have stuff in the chat box. I don't know, Lisa, if I should look at these. We can get to those, I guess. All right, so growing strawberries. Strawberries is a very popular plant to grow here. It's not always the easiest. When you're selecting strawberries, you want to do full sun. A lot of people, you'll find them more in the spring at the garden centers, but actually fall is probably one of the best times to plant your strawberries. You can't always find them at the garden centers, but usually some local places like an Ace Hardware, or if y'all have Pikes, they tend to have them in the fall. And I like to plant them in the fall because then I don't have to deal with all the pests and things like that in the spring when they're newly baby plants. And then if they get established and get growing, they might even give me a little small crop that next spring. So they want an average type of pH 6.0 to 6.5. This is just all the parts of a strawberry. So varieties for North and Middle Georgia, Early Glow, Sweet Charlie. I found some Sweet Charlies before. They don't have to cross-pollinate, so you don't need to worry about the varieties, but these are some that grow well here in Georgia. This is, I'm sure y'all have been strawberry picking before. This is how most strawberry farms do it. They either have a matted row or an annual hill. Again, this is a little more production type, not necessarily for our backyard. But if you have a larger space and you want a lot of strawberries, they say annual hill is best for plants planted in the fall. So, and then a matted row. So basically annual hill, you kind of make a little hill, put it on there, matted row, a little, not as hilly. Um, However, those strawberries tend to be on the ground, so it could introduce wilt a little easier. So before planting, you want to soil test. Make sure you plant at the base of the plant. The top of the crown needs to be above the soil line. You don't want it under and you don't want it too far deep. Remove flowers the first year. Again, that encourages to have a bigger crop the next year. Fertilize twice in the summer, once in May and again in July. So berries produce, I would say probably now. They're not necessarily late May, early June, more like May time. In Florida, of course, it's like February, March, but matted rows, this is probably more like what you would have in your backyard one. You can cover temps with straw to help keep them cool. Just keep them growing. I will say when we had that December freeze 2 or 3 years ago, it killed all my strawberry plants. So make sure you mulch them well. Annual hill, again, these are kind of mounted up. This is what you would see at a strawberry farm. 1 foot between plants. Hill should be 8 inches high. And then they cover them with black plastic and put drip irrigation underneath. And then you just slit a hole in the plastic, put the strawberry plant in there, and you're ready to go. So this is a good one for an example of a home strawberry bed. They have the raised bed. They put this netting over it to keep the birds from coming and picking them because there's nothing more annoying than any sort of animal picking your strawberries. But you can see they have them right there, nice little row. And this is a great example of a strawberry bed. So nothing too fancy, easy little net to keep the birds and squirrels and whatever other pesky critters out. All right, goji berries. These are, they were kind of coming in. I don't know if they're still in or not. They are part of the nightshade family. They're native to China and Eastern Asia. I know one person that grows a lot of goji berries. They want a 6.5 pH, well-drained soil, full sun. They can grow all the way to 12 feet tall. So just remember that if you don't have a large space, these can get to be 12 feet tall. They flower in the late spring and fruit in the midsummer. So this is the second year fruiting plant. Eric Smith, I talked to him about it. He said he's not sure if it gets cold enough here. So since we're kind of more on the USDA zone of 8, it might not get cold. But again, sometimes it does get down in the teens. So I know somebody who grows them and has great success, and they live in Decatur, Georgia. So they do have quite a bit of pests that like them, but so do most of our plants. They are more popular as a dried fruit, so good in granola. Most people don't like them fresh. They like to dry them and put them in granola or, cereal or something like that. So elderberry, as a mom with littles and all the mom chat, they swear by elderberry. I have not used it, but one of our community gardens here does have an elderberry tree. However, I want to stress the leaves, the roots, the stems, and unripe elderberries are poisonous, toxic. So do not eat them. If you see one and the berries are not ripe, you will get sick. If you consume too many of them, it will not be good. So that's one reason why I'm kind of a little worried about trying to give my kids elderberry, is because once they're cooked, then they are fine. Ripe berries are fine. You can even use consume ripe berries raw or whatever. And once they're cooked too, then they're fine. It takes all the toxicity out of them. But if you have a dog or curious children, any of the stems, leaves, roots, and unripe berries are considered toxic. So just so you know, they also do grow on a large tree and they need cross-pollination. So you want to pick when the berries are full and plump. The green berries and canes, so the roots, stems, leaves are poisonous. The ripe raw berries can be eaten, or the cooked berries can be eaten. Just remember, you want to make sure that they have ripened. All right, so those are most of the popular berries. Some nuisance wildlife problems. I get calls about this all the time. Birds, squirrels, chipmunks, mice, if you have mice around. Unless you put a net up or you exclude them in some sort of way, there's not a lot we can do about it. It's just a part of living in Georgia and, having a lot of trees, which is a lot of homes for them. So habitat modification, that means you kind of exclude them. You can use scare devices. A lot of times that might scare them the first time, but then they get over it. Repellents, taste and smell. Sometimes you can put those out there. People say chili powder, this and that and whatever. Once it rains, that gets washed away. Removal, so trapping. We don't necessarily recommend shooting of them in the city. That's not a good idea. Exclusion. So fencing, netting is probably the best way to try to get rid of them. You can put netting over your berry plants. I know one person, their COVID project was to build raised beds, and they had basically a door to the area and had that rabbit wire all the way around, all the way, high up. And so they had no problems with any of their summer vegetables, any of their berries, because they pretty much caged all of their things in. That's probably good, especially if you have deer I live in Atlanta and I have a fence, so I don't have any problem with deer, but I know deer can eat any and everything, really. Sometimes if they're hungry enough, they'll eat some things you're surprised about. My parents have deer and they ate their arborvitae, so. Again, hardware cloth, rabbit wire, which is kind of what you see here. Chicken wire will not always work because they can reach their paws in. Be sure to secure your netting or your wire. They say birds might even walk under the netting if it's not secured down. These are some examples of, they have their little poles and they have the netting around it. This is like pipe that they put this little thing under, so. And then this one on the right is good because you could probably just lift it up, and get in there. So, these are some birds that consume fruit. I'm sure a lot of them love fruit. I just plant enough so the birds can have some, and then I can harvest some myself. This was actually an old garden bed of mine, but I had more of a problem with stray cats. I still have a problem with stray cats, so I put this over them to make sure they weren't using it as their litter box. So. Again, you can always trap them and remove them, but if you trap a squirrel and then you go release it somewhere else, that they're most likely not going to make it. Squirrels are very territorial. You put them in some place they're unfamiliar with, it's not going to be good for them. Here you go. You got your little chipmunk or squirrel right there in your feeder. And then here you go. So any questions for me on those? Lisa, do you want to?
You want me to read the questions to you, Sarah?
Yeah.
Do you want to? Okay. So the first question is, how do you trellis or stake semi-erect blackberries? Hers are currently in the ground, it says.
So I mean, depending on how large they are, I'll go back to that slide. You want to use maybe one of these modified trellises like this, these T trellises, and they have wire. If not, I don't have a trellis. I just have them on a fence. The fence is next to them, and I just kind of tie some of the branches to the fence, like using some of those garden tie type things. I also bought one of those little lattice things next to it so I can stuck that in the ground and kind of tie them to it. And that seems to, they seem to hold on that and they do well. And then of course I start removing some of the old canes and yeah. Nothing super fancy. They just needed something to support them because they weren't going to, they're so big now, they would have flopped over. So
Next one, they're asking if you are willing to share your presentation.
yeah, I'll do a PDF of it. Yeah.
Okay. So if you're interested and you would like a copy of Sarah's presentation, you should have my email address. Go ahead and just email me with a request for that, and I will send you a copy of the slide deck. All right. Next question. Are there any blueberry varieties that work really well for containers?
I mean, most of them would do well in containers. They need to be a large container, but you're gonna have to be on top of pruning them because the bigger they get, the bigger root system they will, and they will not do well. So if you keep them pruned, they might be okay. However, your production might not be as good as if they were in the ground or in a raised bed or something. So there's not any specific, I would say, for containers. That doesn't mean they're not out there, but I don't know if they're great for like Georgia. They're always patenting some sort of container for everything. Apple tree, name it. There's container versions, but I don't know how well they work.
Okay.
So I always say the larger the container, the better, because that's the bigger the root system.
Okay. In the home strawberry bed photo that you showed, is that cardboard being used as a ground cover instead of plastic?
Okay. Get there. That's what it looks like. I don't know if It also looks like they're putting that underneath the strawberries so they're not sitting on the ground. Is kind of what it looks like to me. So I'm thinking they don't want the strawberries to try to get diseased or rot or something like that. So they kind of have them lifted up off the ground. But that's the picture she's talking.
Okay.
So
Uh,
like we kind of do that when you plant melons. There's like some things you can buy. They're like a little plastic thing you sit on the ground. So the melons one don't get a spot on them or they don't get an insect that wants to bore into them. You kind of lift them up off the ground. And that looks like what they're doing with their berries right there.
Gotcha. Okay. Can you talk a little bit about pruning blueberries? Proper ways to do it,
Blueberries.
that kind of thing.
You want to do that. I tend to do it kind of winter time-ish, and I really just do it to shape them so they don't get out of control. So there's really no rhyme or reason to it. They don't have like a primocane or a floricane. They're more of a shrub, and I just try to get them to keep them from like overtaking the area that they're in.
Yes, I
So
have
like
that problem right now. Some of my blueberries are over 10 feet tall. Makes it very
yeah, so
difficult to,
mine aren't that tall, but I kind of let them kind of hang in there, kind of shading out the grass they're next to. So my husband's not really happy about that, but I will definitely be pruning them this coming winter.
all right. Next up, how many elderberries should you plant? And do they take full sun?
Well, they're basically trees and they do cross pollinate, so two. And yes, full sun.
Okay. Let's see. Looks like
Again, those get, what did I say, 12 feet tall?
up to,
So
yeah, they're
they're
big.
gonna get big.
Okay, so I don't see any more questions. If anybody has any specific questions about the program, go ahead and put that in there. I see a couple messages here about what email do we send a request to. I posted it. I posted my email address in there, so just scroll back a little bit and you'll
I'll send
see
it to Lisa.
lisa.klein@gwinnettcounty.com. So just email me there and I'll get you a copy of Sarah's slide deck. Oh, here's one. I have a container blueberry. It bloomed, but the flowers turned brown and fell off with no berry production. Could that have happened because of cold?
Possibly, do you have more than one blueberry? Because if you don't have more than one, that's not going to cross pollinate, and that's why you don't have any berries.
She hasn't specified yet if she has more than one.
But that could be why.
Yeah. We did have a bit of a cold snap earlier, but I don't know if it was enough to really impact
Mhm.
blooms too much. Does anybody else have any questions for Sarah about any type of berry?
General garden questions too. Usually, it's
Other
going to be.
garden questions too. Yeah.
Mhm.
She's the container blueberry person says she has others, but they may not be close enough. That's a good question. How close do they need to be?
I don't have specifics on that. I would say, you know, if one's in the front yard and the other's in the backyard, that might be too far. So maybe in the same vicinity, you know?
And I assume also that they're blooming at the same time. Um,
Yeah.
that's very
That's
important also. They have to bloom at the same time.
it.
Any other questions? Let's see. Are there varieties that don't get as large as trees? I want smaller ones. Blueberries,
What?
yeah.
The blueberries? I mean, if you keep them pruned, they'll stay smaller. People definitely prune them so they're smaller, or they can even make them like a hedge at some point. Some people do that too. So they have pretty fall colors, so that's another thing to consider.
I
But they
see.
are deciduous, so they will not have leaves in the winter. So
So they won't hide that annoying dog that your neighbor has, unfortunately.
yeah.
I enjoyed the presentation, someone says.
Yeah.
So, and last chance for questions. No
If
more?
not, email Lisa all your questions. I'm sure she can answer them.
I've
If not,
probably heard it before,
if
but I
not,
have your email address, so I'll make sure they get that.
yeah, I'll put my email address in the chat box in case anybody wants to ask me any questions. I also do nighttime programs. I'm about to put out a new whole thing for July to November if you go on the UGA DeKalb County website. So
You want to put that in the chat as well?
I just say type UGA extension with DeKalb County in your browser, and that's probably the easiest way to find it because our
Yeah.
email, our
Okay.
website address.
There is one more question. Organic way to avoid strawberry slugs. Are there any?
Um, what is it? The beer and the whatever that traps them. I mean, there's also some. I know some people use Sluggo. I don't really know if that's considered organic, but yeah, people like to use that diatomaceous earth too for the slugs that are considered a little more organic. So, and that's probably why this picture they have them lifted up off the ground for slug issues.
Yes. Okay. Well, I think that's about it. If any last chance, any other questions? We still have a little bit of time. If you don't, then you can, here, I'll put my email in the chat again. You can email me and I can get you a copy of Sarah's slide deck. And if you have questions specifically for Sarah, she's got her email in there, smiths@uga.edu. And what's that?
Smith@uga.edu. It's my main name.
Yeah, your maiden name. So it is correct. It's just her maiden name. And that's basically it for today. So thank you all for tuning in. I do record these and it will show up at our Metro Master Gardener YouTube channel. Give me a second here and I will share that. There's a whole wealth of things there that you can, if you're bored in the middle of the night and need to fall asleep, you can go find all sorts of stuff there that you can fall
Best
asleep.
recommendation for any gardener is to get a soil test because if you get your soil right, then you're most likely will get any plant you want to grow, as long as it has the right sunlight requirements.
Yes. Yeah, soil tests are the thing. And they can help over in DeKalb, and you can definitely come here. And most all of our extension offices, even if you're out of state, can help you out as well. So I will go ahead and sign off. Thank you, Sarah, for coming. And we didn't have any internet problems this time, so yay.
Yes, maybe it's because I'm at home and not at the office. So, all right, take care, everyone. Have a
Okay,
good
thank
afternoon.
you. Bye-bye.